Welcome to Zero Gravity's podcast. Today I have my good friend, Dr. Steven. Real quick, for people that are unfamiliar with yourself, give us a brief background so the listeners are like, I completely know who we're talking to.
Sure. Well, I've had a number of different lives. I'll start with the crypto one. So back in 2013, I was at Fortress doing some work with an IP fund and decided I wanted to leave. And the guy who runs Fortress, called Pete Brigger, whose business partner at the time was Mike Novogratz, said, "Hey, if you got any other ideas, come back in a month and let me know what you got." So I went off and talked to some friends, and one of the guys I knew said, "Hey, did you try this Bitcoin thing?" I was like, "Yeah, I read about that." This was like Feb 2013, so no people were looking at it. And so I went back to Pete and I said, "Hey, what about we do some Bitcoin?" He's like, "Oh, we're already buying Bitcoin." He's got, "You got any other ideas?" And I was like, "Yeah, how about we invest in the companies around Bitcoin?" So um, a while later, and with the addition of with the crucial addition of Dan Morehead, we spun out this initiative into Pantera Capital. So I was a founding member of the crypto initiative at Pantera, a partner there for 3.5 years. And then in 2017, I started my own project called Orchid Labs, which was a decentralized VPN platform. And most recently, I've been angel investing in the space. I'm an early investor in Risk Zero and Squid, Router, and also the last couple of years been working in the AI space, partially the intersection of AI and crypto, but primarily focused on AI in general on the infrastructure level. Before crypto, I did a PhD in AI in the 90s at Cambridge, worked at NASA for a bunch of years, and then had a long Web2 career in San Francisco.
So it's fair to say Dr. Steven Waterhouse is quite a smart guy. I listen to your bio. I'm like, I need to do a lot more. I need to sleep less and I need to do a lot more. Okay, so one of the things
Turns
we
out
talk
actually
about
sleeping more is better. It's weird enough. Like the more you sleep, the
it's
more you get done. I'm
peculiar.
like, huh?
No, I just continue to funnel more coffee into the system to
Yeah,
diminishing returns.
there is
So
that.
So one of your hot takes on this podcast, we talk a lot about AI, decentralized AI specifically, but one of your
Sure.
real hot takes is that, crypto is dead. And I'd just love for you to expand upon like what you mean by that and that AI is the new
Yeah.
base case.
So I was just at East Denver, right? And a lot of people came back from Denver a little sad. I was fine. I stayed in the Four Seasons and just like was in the lobby for like the entire conference. I went to a couple of events hosted by some friends. I hosted dinner. I had great conversations, but all the conversations revolved around two things. One is finance. And I know crypto equals finance, but really crypto does equal finance now. And it didn't always used to equal finance. It used to be like, oh, we're going to have gaming, we're going to have identity, we're going to have social, we're going to have all these different things. And there was lots of ideas that were out there that we were looking at over years and the last few years in different roles in VC worlds. And all of a sudden, it's like, no, the real thing is stable coins, ETFs, tokenizing funds, actually taking traditional finance and making it cryptified. And that's the play. That is, and that's why I think a lot of people are like sad right now because they're like just realize that it's not like traditional finance won. It's that, well, we kind of won the traditional finance game and we're going to go off and do that. But for a lot of us, that's not very interesting. It's just, it's kind of boring to continue trying to expand DeFi and make it bigger and better and so on and so forth. It's great. But I, for one, have never been that interested in just the financial use case. I think making all this stuff much more efficient is an incredible piece of work, and it's going to take another decade to even get close to that. And it's going to be a much more powerful system once it's built. It's not even like crypto / AI. It's actually, I see crypto companies becoming AI companies. And so the investments we've done now, the conversations I have with the founders is like, stop thinking of yourself as a crypto AI company. You're an AI company, and your backend is crypto. But you're doing the same thing. You're trying to sell services to developers. You're trying to sell services to companies, whether the services are benchmarking, inference, training, data collection, whatever it is. You got this front end funnel, which is connecting to customers, some magic in the middle, whichever it is, what model that is, and then some decentralized deep in GPU, call it whatever you want, right? The decentralized incentivized architecture, which you sell people to crypto. That's it. That's the crypto AI. So you have these two things where it's like either finance or AI right now. There'll be other things in the future, but those are the two big plays that are happening currently. And
It's kind of
if you're not
funny.
if you're not in one of those two things, like you basically crypto is dead to you. It's just memes and bullshit. So excuse me, but we can
No,
listen to
no,
that.
it's all good. I mean, to me, it's kind of funny. I came away from Eat Denver sad because of a different reason. I guess because I come from an institutional background. Like I worked at BlackRock and Google, and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, of course, like crypto
Yeah.
would be like the back end, and my parents wouldn't care. Oh, is this on Monad or is this on like Solana?
Right.
They're
Right.
not
Right.
going to care. They're just like, yeah, it works, and stable coins are fast. I came away sad from Eat Denver because I just realized that the Ethereum ecosystem is so reminiscent of the Ethereum Foundation, where like the main event isn't that interesting, and all of the action is happening on side events that are highly fragmented. And I just viewed it
Yeah.
as like a kind of a parallel to that. But I
Well,
discovered
maybe
back.
like the sort of analogy that maybe Ethereum is Linux, which is it doesn't. It's incredibly important, but very little value is gonna, in comparison, maybe less value accrues
Yes.
to it than say Android, right, which uses Linux. So base currently is accruing more, like more apparent or has more momentum. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it seems to have more momentum, say, in Ethereum. It's getting more developers, it's getting more users, but it's based on Ethereum. Just
Yeah.
like Red Hat is based on Linux, just like Android is based on Linux, and so on. So it kind of the danger point I think for Ethereum is that it wins, and in winning becomes irrelevant in its purest sense, but becomes relevant completely. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think all of
Absolutely.
these things are okay. So yeah, I was a maxi at one point briefly in my first couple of years at Pantera, and then all these other things came along that actually work, like Ethereum, and then it was like, okay, it doesn't matter, like whatever works. Um, I admire and appreciate a lot of the principles behind Ethereum, but I'm also an engineer and I'm a pragmatist, and I want things to work. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to switch a million chains just to do a transaction. So yeah, my firm belief is like my mom doesn't know if she's on MongoDB or Bigtable. She just uses it and it works and abstracts it
Sure.
away from her. So one of the interesting things you mentioned is that like people should stop thinking of themselves as crypto or an AI company, like or just a crypto AI company. It's like no, we're all AI companies now, and we may use crypto. So, what are some of the use cases that you think actually fit for decentralized AI? Is it just like agents will have wallets now? Like, what do you think is really
No, I
exciting?
think the agent wallet thing is a sideshow. I have a quite counter perspective on this one. Um, I have this Substack thing called Robot Wave, and if you go to my Twitter, you'll see it. And I wrote a recent piece talking about my explorations in the enterprise agent space. That's like largely based out of San Francisco, a bunch of startups in like South Park and places that you were like .com darling areas. And these guys are building agent frameworks, and they're used by half the Fortune 500. So
Wow.
we're talking people are going in and re-engineering their SaaS architectures and their backend middleware and replacing it with agent frameworks. And that's product market fit right there.
100%.
Giving an agent on Twitter a wallet and saying it's autonomous and then arguing about whether it's really autonomous. And then I'm like, what's the product market fit? And they say, well, you know what? It's really cool because it can make versions of itself. And it's like, well, I don't care. Like, I didn't like the first version. Like, why do I want to make lots of these things? They're just going to pollute the Twitter timeline. I think that's what we saw last year. It's just this sort of hype. All of a sudden, everyone's like, oh my God, I can do something. And in crypto, we get super excited by memetics. And something that kind of creates its own memetics and just talks without you having to do anything. I mean, that's like, it's amazing, right? The return on investment is crazy, but it's a flash in the pan. If you look at the Goatsy coin, it went up, went down, it's flat, it's back to where it started. There are really powerful things you can do with agents. One of the things that was running around last year was if you want agents to work, you need crypto rails. Stripe has an agent API, and people are using Stripe. in a world where not everybody uses Stripe, or you want to do things that you can't use Stripe, or other reasons, or agents want to talk to each other, maybe then you get to the point where, okay, the crypto becomes interesting. But just as like crypto is pushing into the payment space, as I was talking about, crypto is becoming finance, finance is becoming crypto, then the payment rails for agents can quite easily do the same thing. But this is not an either or situation. So I don't see these situations as like crypto AI beats AI. I think it's like we got to merge these things and figure out where we're useful. So to answer your question, one of the most interesting things you can do, I believe, right now is bootstrap compute. So this is going back into the sort of the deep in narrative that was kicking around a lot last year. Um, I'm talking to a company right now that's got they let's just say they do a kind of drug discovery, right? And in order to get that drug discovery to work, they need compute. They need like tens of millions of dollars of compute. Now they can go raise that, go spend it, and build it, and so on. But they came up with this idea, like, hey, maybe we can use one of these, deep in things we've heard of, like people are willing to like, run these things. And so now we're designing a token economic model for these guys to run, and it's actually not quite AI, but it's a similar kind of idea. It's like running, solving problems, and providing services. So if you sort of think through that model that I was talking about, where you've got a front-facing component, which is talking to customers, selling them services. Okay, I'm an investor in a company that sells benchmarking services called Lens. Their backend is GPU incentivized. It's a deep in architecture. So that kind of model where it's this hybrid of normal Web 2, whatever you call it, AI services with a Web 3 backend. I think that model can play out quite well. Now, there are other kinds of ideas where the whole thing is more like Web3 native, like it just lives within the Web3 world. And I see this sort of situation in things like BitTensor, although BitTensor arguably is still in the end trying to provide some valuable services that somebody's willing to consume and pay for.
Interesting. I've heard some I mostly from people outside of crypto for the deepen model that like the token like although can bootstrap the network, can often provide like this sideshow that
Yeah.
becomes really difficult because of the fluctuations in token
Yeah.
prices. Like what's your general take there? Is like should we be using like tokenomics to bootstrap these networks, given that like the price fluctuations and the community sentiment often can turn very bearish very quickly?
Well, without getting into a token economic design here, I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's to the extent that you can adjust the reward amount to match current economics, then sure, you can have a volatile token, but you could also just compensate people in stablecoins and use the token for other components there. But there's a number of ways to design that architecture. I think that when you look at some of the things that are happening around distributed training and the work that Prime Insight is doing and News Research and Jensen is doing, I think there you start to see this capability of, well, what if you could break the current logjam of training has to happen in a certain way? And then you can create more incentivized architectures. So you can imagine also combining that with things like the new diffusion models and the DeepSeek architectures that are coming through, and people are finding new ways to train more cost effectively, and then combine that with the distributed model. Our fund is very specifically a hybrid. So we're looking at essentially ways to scale AI infrastructure, and some of those we believe are distributed, decentralized architectures, and some of them are not. And so we're exploring all these kind of ideas. One of our largest investments is a non-crypto decentralized GPU platform called Vast. And they don't need a token because they just have tons of demand. So lots of people want to use their stuff. They have people who want to provide it. There are even ideas there where you could potentially tokenize compute, even if you don't have a token that you're using for rewards. You can still pay people, and then you could allow people to invest in a token. So it's not really a deep end. It's just like another way to think about tokenizing, the economic value.
Yeah, to me, it's very like interesting to think about where, and I remember talking to a Hack VC about this. Is like where in the stack of AI products will value accrual? Will it be in the compute layer? Will it be in the like training layer? Will it be for like GPT wrappers, for lack of a better term? So I'm quite curious on like where you think value will accrue, and because it seems to me like when we've seen DeepSeek come out, will have like a very negative impact in the pricing that any kind of model can charge, like any kind of fixed pricing, especially.
A friend of mine put it something like AI is not going to make any one person rich, it's just going to make all of us rich. And that's not answering a question. This question is the crucial one for people investing in the AI space. What I've tried to do is create a framework where I decide what I don't invest in. So I'm not investing in applications unless there's something very specific. Like this drug discovery one we're looking at is very interesting, so we're looking at that. But more kind of generic applications where it's like, oh, I've got this thing where I'm going to apply AI to this problem and I've got some data. We don't think that there's going to be a lot of value in those things very quickly. It's a bit like investing in websites in the 90s. And to kind of put it simply, the model I invest in today will create the application that you invested in, yesterday. Right? So, or tomorrow, right? It's like we're building applications. People are just going to build things on demand. I think the other thing we're not particularly looking at hardware right now. Just partly because I don't have a hardware background, but also I think it's a very tough game to play in. Physical infrastructure is also very tough. So we're primarily focusing on the kind of infrastructure in the middle there. Now, I think there is value that will accrue there. I think that it's a very fast-moving space, and we will see a lot of kind of destruction of the current value chain and replacement. And the tooling, the way that things are coordinated, the frameworks that are built around those areas, even if the models themselves are fast-moving, open source, changing all the time, I think that the companies that are able to provide those frameworks will be effective. It's almost like kind of like middleware. But I think a lot of middleware may end up looking like agents as well, because the idea is agents are kind of replacing middleware too.
Yeah, I remember talking with David from Lip Protocol, and he was saying, and I'm not sure you'd agree with this, is that he thinks the app paradigm is largely dying. Whereas, like in the past, you went to an app store, you downloaded a specific app. It's like now you might just have an agent, or you might just have some kind of
Yep.
like overarching agent that would just
Make me this thing, right?
Yeah.
Make me something that does this. Yeah, I agree with that. It's sort of like apps are dead, long live apps. You don't want to invest in these things. You want to invest in the things that build them.
And then you talk specifically about having, many of the crypto, pieces being more pieces of the AI stack itself, like coordination, composability, wallets, payments, and that these will largely just fuse with the existing AI companies. If you were talking to, say, like a Web2 founder who's maybe skeptically looked at crypto and maybe skeptically looked at wallets, things of that nature, what would you kind of say to them in order to be like, hey, there's a there here?
Well, I don't know if there's a there here right now. Right?
Oh,
I think it's just around the corner. But I think that we've got a bit of work to do to make our frameworks more friendly to that world. If you just even look at the the agent framework, the Web2 and the Web3 agent frameworks are vastly different. Different programming language, different platforms, different interfaces, different thinking processes. Just figuring out how to merge those two things together such that you could start to access Web3 composability. I think the DAO tooling and the frameworks around that will be pretty interesting for how you coordinate different agents together, how you marshal resources and compose outputs from one to another. The whole concept of trust, I think, becomes interesting. Where do you want to run something and you want to run this agent, but you can only find this, like Jax has made this agent, right? It's not Oracle, it's not like Microsoft, but it's a bunch of a bunch of guys. You got this thing, but your agent's really cool and it does the thing I'm looking for it to do. So I send the request to it, and then you come back with the answer. But can I trust your answer? Can I verify it in some way? Can I have some kind of level of um, proof there? Now, you could do that using a reputation. You could do that using the kind of optimistic kind of scenarios we've built out. You could use it using some kind of zero knowledge technique. And so you start thinking through a lot of these techniques that have been built up because crypto's got good at dealing with distributed systems, dealing with untrustworthy systems, to the extent that, so I guess it's kind of like a game here, right? If the future AI systems are not big monolithic systems, and if you look at the ChatGPT models, there's no ChatGPT 5 yet. And in fact, the models are actually getting smaller and becoming more agentic in terms of like other things that built together. They plug in different models together and making them work together. So either the world consists of a series of monolithic platforms, or it doesn't, right? So then there's like lots of different kinds of things. If there's lots of different kinds of things, lots of different kinds of agents, figuring out how to trust these things and how to coordinate responses from one or more of these things, I think is going to require the kind of tooling and the kind of frameworks that we've been building in crypto. So that is really the opportunity. However,
Yeah.
we're not there yet, right? We barely have agents that work well enough to kind of trust them to do one thing, never mind string them together and have them do other things. But we might get there very fast because AI is a very, very fast moving space.
Now, you'd mentioned earlier that you were seeing agents, presumably non-crypto agents, that were, kind of doing a lot of the middleware processes that you would see at a Fortune 500.
Mhm.
What are you seeing kind of happen there, and what do you think is the path towards acceleration?
I think what you're seeing, what I'm seeing there is, there's companies like Crew AI. These guys provide a lot of frameworks, coordination, multiple cooperative agent architectures, the way that that works in an enterprise framework. And the the previous paradigm of software as a service and the middleware that's servicing that is getting very quickly, people very, very quickly sort of starting to experiment with, oh, can I take that component out and replace it with an agent? Can I take that and replace it with an agent? Like adding that extra level of intelligence enhances the system and then also makes it more productivity higher because often you need less people to do that, or you can just do more, right? Um, and so I think that's the excitement around the middleware design change. I'll give you like a practical example. I started playing around with different CRM systems because I'm fundraising and I also have lots of deal flows. So I have to like handle everyone needs a CRM, right? And every CRM that's out there is brittle in some way. And in the end, it's just a database. But what they are is they are structured databases that we developed unstructured query languages, like human languages, to talk to. Whereas language models are specifically designed for unstructured language. It's just, originally back to words, and that's just it's complicated, much more complicated system. And so you could build a CRM just by pointing at a mailbox, which is a text file, pointing at your contacts, pointing at your calendar, and just say, figure out how to build a CRM from this. And you do that with enough sort of sophistication and nuances and like the right kind of front end. And all of a sudden you've got Affinity, you've got maybe not Salesforce, but you've got effectively a simple CRM. So you kind of go back to what I was saying is that really it's just an agent. So it's a language model wrapped up in an interface, which we're going to call an agent that's consuming different resources and tools and then acting as my assistant slash CRM. So that's a specific use case where you're like, okay, I can see where I can take all of this SaaS stuff and all this company and so on and just turn the CRM by just creating a couple of databases and language model. And I think that
Yeah,
all these SaaS companies are just going to end up being a language model, a bunch of GPU, and then a bunch of kind of tools that and databases that sit around it.
yeah. It's to me. I remember talking with a partner at another VC, and I was talking to him, and I was like, "Well, where like if software is so easily replicatable, like the ability to replicate software is going down, down, down. Like, where is the actual like defensible moat for like a company like Salesforce? Of course, their software is very complex, yada yada. But like the 80/20 solution, like the CRM you're mentioning, like what is the future for like startup founders if they're like, wow, someone tomorrow could replicate my particular product?
I don't know. I don't know if we have the answer yet. People are still very attached to moats. Like I, I am still using ChatGPT primarily, even though I'm exposed to a lot of other things, even though I know how to run things on my own machine, even though I do this and so on. So thought processes here are metaphors. One is we're probably going to build tools or build systems that are going to be effectively kind of AI native, like companies that you couldn't build them otherwise. Because currently what we're doing is we're going around, like even this example of Salesforce, right? Okay, great, yeah, it's a slightly smarter CRM. So what? It's cute. Like, okay, I get it. And it's the same as people adding in eventually chatbot interfaces. It's like, okay, I can do DeFi by talking to it. I don't care. Like it's it's like we don't care. So it's like it's cute, but before you know it, everyone can do that, and it's like you just don't care. So you say, okay, what could I build in a world of AI that I just couldn't build before? And those will be the Instagrams and the Ubers of the future. Those will be the things that are just like, whoa, like whoever thought that up really understood what was happening AI. And the same with this, the combination of crypto and AI, the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, what could we do that's really unique? That's one thing. The second thing is that, and this is why it's weird being an investor over so many decades as I've been and a founder, is that you kind of have to reboot your brain quite a lot because what's going to be required is what I call a generational change. And the reason I call it generational with sort of inverted commas is that it's not necessarily a whole generation, but it could be within 5 years, people who are starting to build in this space or use these systems won't understand how things were before. They will just like, it won't make sense to them. Like my kids, they're teenagers, they don't understand
The
what it
phone
was
is
like to not have a phone, right? What it
yeah,
was like to not have the internet. They're like, and I can't understand either anymore. I remember it,
yeah.
but I can't remember how I thought back then. And so in a few years' time, we'll be in a point where we can't remember how we thought without the systems that we have today. And the things that are super, super successful and the moats will become things that make a lot of sense to us then. And so I'm dodging the question because
Fair, fair.
it's a bit like you're trying to explain a different dimensional space to people who live in 3D. It's like you're just like, that doesn't make sense. And I think we're starting to glimpse it, and there are some people who, great thinkers who are starting to talk about it, but I don't know if we're totally understanding all of it yet.
Yeah.
So,
I always go back to the quote.
and also, if I
Uh,
knew, I wouldn't tell everyone here on this call. So.
yeah, fair enough. Thesis driven, hiddenly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I always go back to the first time founders think about product. Second time founders think a lot about distribution. My big thing is like, well, most people are going to use ChatGPT if it's the 80% solution, even if there
Mm.
comes out like some better like ChatGPT 10x, like really only researchers are probably going to be there. And my mom is probably still going to send voice notes to ChatGPT. So just an interesting thing. But as we start to wrap up, we're obviously like a decentralized
Okay.
AI podcast. Talk to us a little bit about like where, like, do you feel like there's even a need for decentralized AI, or you think it's just like, hey, crypto rails, distributed systems are going to be important, and we're going to see more of the centralized players kind of adopt that?
So I'm an investor in a company called Intelligent Internet. And this is run by Ahmad, who built Stability AI. And so he's trying to do something which really is decentralized AI, like AI that's owned by the people, data that's owned by the people, but the people who are participating in the system. I think that world is possible. Um, I don't know whether these things are venture investments, and we were lucky enough to be in the early part of this. I think these things may look more like um, fair launch architectures, systems that just kind of spring up. Morpheus is another example of this kind of system. And David Johnson's a friend, and I'm a big fan of what they're doing.
I just talked to him yesterday,
Um,
actually.
yeah, these are like the really pure decentralized AI. What I'm investing in is like arguably some kind of hybrid between the two things, right? It's like enterprise plus decentralized. It's like Web 2 plus Web 3. There's a lot of that stuff out there. I'm also looking at this other world, but it's just like I'm explaining the current narrative that I'm focused on. And one of the reasons why I'm so heavily focused on this narrative right now is I'm trying to, in my little way, and I do it with my own companies, of course, first, but trying to talk about we need to wake up to what the products are here in crypto. We cannot just try and live off memetics. We have to find product market fit. And I think there is a very big opportunity, and I'm not alone in this. And it's one of the reasons I started this fund for crypto, for AI to be such an important product for crypto to work in that along with the financial application, it could be two legs of this thing, which could make a real difference to all of us in the crypto space and to systems all over the place. And that goes beyond the big AI is bad, crypto's going to come save you narrative, which is important, and which guys like Imad and guys like David are looking at. And I'm very much, as you can see with my previous work at Orchid, I have a lot of time for that kind of thinking process. But I also want to make sure that we don't just dive into memetics and hope that we're going to meme our way out of this next cycle.
Absolutely. So finally, where can people, I know you mentioned your Twitter earlier, where can people learn more about like some of the things that you're thinking about? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so the website is nazare.io. I'm pretty easy to find. Just search my name. You'll find my Twitter. It's D7Troll, DE7TRL. 7 is my nickname. I'm at quite a lot of the crypto events globally. Yeah, just drop me a line. Happy to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put the link down in the description. So to everyone listening, let's continue building the future of on-chain.